I live in Bangladesh, and this happened to my grandpa. At that time, my grandpa lived in Khazir Hat village in the Bahankar area of Barisal. My grandpa was a khatib of the mosque. In those days, the village side was covered with dense jungle. My father said that we did not see even 10% of those forests whatever. In those days, there were no muezzins in the mosques. Khatibs used to perform azan and salat. And that's why my grandpa had to go to the mosque very early in the morning. My grandpa's house was quite a distance from the mosque. It was very difficult to get khatib in those days. One day, when it was time for far prayers, Grandpa went out to the mosque. In the light of the full moon, everything around is clear. Through the dense jungle road, a gust of wind blew away. The air was quite hot. As soon as the hot air hit him, he stood up and began to think. It is still too late for the sun to rise, but this kind of hot air must need the midday sun. This is because the heat of the midday sun mixes with the air, creating hot air. But now, how is such a wind created? Grandpa didn't like it, so he started walking again. After going some distance, the hot air started blowing again. This time, Grandpa was a little scared. He began to recite prayers in his mind. Crossing the dense jungle forest, this time he is walking along the road next to the huge paddy field. As he walked, Grandpa noticed a bull chasing him from a distance. Now Grandpa is left to understand that this is the work of a bad genie. Grandpa started walking, pretending not to see the thing. After walking some distance, he saw a black cat walking on the road. As soon as Grandpa blinks, the cat disappears. Grandpa was no longer afraid, but he was very angry in his mind. Grandpa has crossed the paddy field and started walking through a forest road again. However, this forest is not as forested as the previous forest. This time, Grandpa noticed that something like faint white cotton was floating behind him. Grandpa stopped, looked back, and said, "You had upset me. I am going for far prayers. Don't bother sitting back. Then the result will not be good." As soon as Grandpa said this, the plants swayed in a gust of wind. The rest of the way, Grandpa did not encounter anything unusual. That night, after the Isha prayers, all the men went home. My grandpa had some work on the mosque. It takes about 9 o'clock at night to finish them. Then Grandpa left for his home. It's a dark night, pitch dark all around. Grandpa is walking alone in this thick darkness with a lamp in his hand. Just when Grandpa came to the small forest, his body became a little heavy. Then he recited the dua of Sat Salam, took the fu on his chest, and started walking along the road inside the forest. Going a little farther, he heard the sound of dry bamboo breaking. Grandpa thought to himself, there are no bamboo bushes around, but where is the sound of cracking this bamboo coming from? The next moment, Grandpa understood everything, and he was quite upset. In his mind, he decided that he had to teach this evil jinn a lesson, or else he would continue to annoy him every day. That is what he did. This time, Grandpa started walking while reciting Ayatollah Kursi dua in his mind. As soon as he crossed the small forest and entered the road next to the paddy field, a light sound came to Grandpa's ears. In fact, you eat with fish. Why don't you bring it for me? You left it in that pot. At that time, the mosque committee used to arrange food for the khatib of the mosque. So Grandpa was allowed to eat rice with 2 pictures of hilsa fish that day. But Grandpa only ate 1 fish and left the rest on the plate. The bad genie regrets seeing that. If Grandpa had brought the fish for him, he could have had fun eating it. So he recited that verse and started saying it to his grandpa's ear. Grandpa said nothing, reciting prayers in his mind and walking along the paddy field. Bad Genie got no answer to his words, as if he were making a storm with the sound of cracking bamboo. However, Grandpa was walking alone and waiting for the opportunity. Whatever the genie noticed, Grandpa had no fear at all. He is walking. Meanwhile, the genie is not able to attack Grandpa's body and cannot do any harm to him. This time, the genie started making the sound of cracking bamboo near Grandpa's feet. But Grandpa was not disturbed at all, he just started reciting dua. I did not find any way. This time Jenny came in front of Grandpa and started making noise. And on this occasion, Grandpa threw the prayer in front of Jenny. Immediately, the genie got stuck. This time, not finding any other way, Jenny started crying and apologized to Grandpa. Grandpa said, "You have no forgiveness. If I leave you, you will disturb me on my way to prayer again. And I will not let that happen. I will tie you to the tree next to you so that you do no harm to anyone." Bad Jenny cried when he heard this and begged Grandpa to forgive him this time. He will never bother him again. Grandpa then says, "You will leave. What do you want to do, subject to his evidence?" Bad Jenny says, "I will do whatever you order. I have a big hole in the back of the pond. Although we filled it with soil many times, the hole gets bigger every year in the rainy season, and all the fish in the pond come out. You go and tie it tight so that it never happens again." Bad Jenny agreed, and Grandpa let him go. The next morning, Grandpa saw that the hole had been filled very perfectly. Since then, the hole has never grown bigger, the pond has not broken down, and the genie has never bothered Grandpa.